Hello class. Okay, let's go over this test review real quick. So your test tomorrow is going to be over slope and y-intercept. So you're going to be given several different things. You're going to be given an equation where you're going to have to find slope, like in question number 1. You're going to be given a t-chart where you've got to find slope and y-intercept from a t-chart. And you're going to be given 2 points that lie on the same line and have to find slope and y-intercept. Right? And then apply all of that. So let's go through this real fast. Let's see how fast we can do it. Okay, so in the first one, if you're given an equation and asked to find slope and y-intercept, that should be a given, because we know that this 3 is going to represent our y-intercept. Right? Now we could actually use that as a point, so you could actually write that as 0, 3, because we know that's going to be the y value in x is 0, but I'll accept 3 as your answer. And then slope, we know, is always going to be in the form of a fraction. So this 5 right here represents our slope. But really the slope is 5 over 1. And that's really the answer that I'd like to see. But I will accept just the 5. Now in a t-chart, we know that to find slope and y-intercept from here, we're going to use our delta y divided by delta x, the change in y divided by the change in x. So I've given you a process that I want you to follow when you do this. And the first thing we look for in a t-chart is, can you find the y-intercept? Okay, so we know the y-intercept is going to be the 0 or the y value when x is 0. So I look down here to x is 0. We have one. Our y value is 12. So it's 12. And again, that would actually be the point of 0, 12 on the graph. And then we know the slope is going to be using the delta y over delta x, which is the change in y, which in this case is 5. Make sure it's consistent, divided by the change on the x side. So 5 divided by 1 is 5 over 1, or just 5, either one. So both of those are the same slope. Now in number 3 here, what I'm asking you to find is, I'm giving you 2 points, find the slope. Okay? So we know that if we're given 2 points, that we have a formula that we can use, which is m equals y2 minus y1 divided by x2 minus x1. So again, like we've talked in the past, you identify one of the points as 1, identify the other point as number 2. So this first point becomes x1 and y1. The second point becomes x2 and y2. So that tells us that our y2 then is 0 minus 6 divided by negative 2 minus negative 4. Okay. So we do our math. Well, 0 minus 6, we change that to plus negative 6, gives us negative 6, divided by, we change this one and we get negative 2 plus 4, which gives us 2. And negative 6 over 2 simplifies down to negative 3 over 1. So there's our slope. Now we need to find our y-intercept. Well, in order for us to do that, we can do one of 2 things. We can make a t-chart and create this based on our slope, okay, because it says I'm counting by negative 3's, or I can just use my formula. Y equals blank x plus blank. Well, the number that goes here is going to be the negative 3. Okay, now I take one of my points. So I'm going to take this one right here because it's the easiest point. And I'm going to plug my negative 2 into where x is. I'm going to plug my 0 into where y is. So 0 equals negative 3 times negative 2 plus what? So negative 3 times negative 2 gives me 6, plus what will give me a 0 as an answer. And we know that's going to be a negative 6. So my y-intercept then is negative 6. Okay, so the equation would actually be y equals negative 3x plus negative 6. And that would give you those 2 points. Okay. So the next one says, when the data from the table are graphed on a coordinate grid, the points all lie on the same line. It's very important that it says the points all lie on the same line. Okay, so that means that it fits our y equals mx plus b formula. What are the slope and y-intercept of this line? Well, again, first thing I ask you to find is y-intercept when you're given a t-chart. You look to see, do we have an x is 0? Yes, we do. So our y-intercept is 2. Okay. Then our slope, okay, remember our slope when we're dealing with the t-chart is delta y divided by delta x. Well, your delta y is negative 3. And your delta x is 1. So negative 3 divided by 1 is negative 3 over 1, or just negative 3. I will accept that. Okay, same thing on this one, but then in this problem, I'm asking you to actually create the equation. We should be just plugging in the information. So let's look for our y-intercept first. Oh, good, we've got a 0 value. So that means our y-intercept is 6. So our slope then is, our change on this side is positive 4 because we're increasing by 4. And then on the other side, I'm actually decreasing by 2. So this is actually 4 divided by negative 2, which is actually negative 2. Okay, so we end up with, for our equation, y is equal to negative 2x plus 6. Okay, negative 2x plus 6. So if you were to plug this into your calculator, you should get this same exact t-chart. Okay, look at 2 more. Okay, now we've got a rate of change problem. Now we know this rate of change is the same thing as slope. It's the same exact thing. That's all I'm asking you for. So it says identify the slope, M, the y-intercept, B, and the equation that is represented by the table. So again, I ask you to find y-intercept first. Okay, so we look up here. Now which one of these is going to represent our x and which one's going to represent our y? Well, our time is something that doesn't change, but the height that we go up based on time will change. So time is our x and height is our y. Right? So we look at our y-intercept. So here is our x value of 0, our y value is also 0. So our y-intercept is 0. Now our rate of change, okay, is going to be our pattern on the right, or the pattern for the y, which is counting by 4s, and our pattern on the x side, which is 1s. So our slope then, or our rate of change, is 4 over 1. And what this stands for is that we're going to go up 4 feet every minute. Okay, so we're going to rise 4 feet every minute. Now, how am I going to plug this into the equation? Well, your rate of change, like I said, is the same thing as slope. So this becomes 4x plus 0, or just y is equal to 4x, because we know we don't have to add the 0. Now, how do I find all of this from a graph? All right. Well, the y-intercept again is real simple. Find where does it cross the y-axis. So there's our good point of where it crosses. And what is that point? The point is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So our y-intercept is 4. Okay. Now, what we have to do is, to find our slope, we look for our good points. So here's a good point, here's a good point, and here's a good point. So I'm going to use these 2 points right here. Okay, and I go rise over run. So how far did it rise? 1, 2, 3, 4, and it ran 2. So that means my slope is equal to 4 over 2, which is equal to 2 over 1. 2 over 1. All right, so now what would the equation be? Well, I'll take the slope, plug it in here, y-intercept, plug it in there. Should be a no-brainer on those. Okay, last 3 questions. Question number 8. So here's kind of an application question. The graph shows the relationship between the amount of sales Mr. Jameson makes each week and the amount of money he earns at the department store. What is the y-intercept? Okay, well again, we're looking for where does it cross the y-axis. So we're looking, here's our y-axis, here's our x-axis. So where does it cross? It crosses at $1,000. So our y-intercept then is $1,000. And yes, I would like to see you put labels on your answers. Now we're looking for what is the slope. So we've got to look at some good points. So here's a good point. Okay, here's a good point. Here's a good point. Okay, so if we use those points there, this one right here goes up 1 line, which is actually how much? Okay, going from 1,000, this one's 1,500, so this is actually going up 250. It's going up 250. And then this one goes across, how much? 5,000. So we end up with a slope of 250 over 5,000. But then what do we have to do with that? We do have to simplify that. Okay, so if we do our simplifying and we ask how many times does 250 go into 5,000, it actually goes in there 20 times. So we end up with 1 over 20 as the slope of the line. So now, when we look at our equation is 1 over 20, and then your y-intercept is 1,000. Okay, so there's the equation. Okay, number 9. The graph models the value of a machine over a 10-year period. According to the graph, what is the rate of change? Again, remember, rate of change is nothing but slope. So what is our slope? Okay, so again, we picked some good points. So here's a good point at 8, and here's a good point right here at 2. Okay, or there's another one here at 4. Okay, or another one at 6. So those are all good points. So if we do that, we're going to go down 1. Okay, so down 1 and right 2. So down 1 is actually 1. So that means our slope is 1 over. And then we go over, we look here, we go over 2. So our slope is, or our rate of change is 1 over 2. So what that means is for every year, it's going to devalue by $2,000 or $2,000 per year. Okay, so down 1, and that down 1 is actually negative. Okay, so we got to make sure that we have the negative in there, and that negative does represent because the slope is going down. And then what is the y-intercept? Well, if we look here at the y-intercept, it's at 8 right there. So y-intercept is 8, and that really stands for $8,000. But on the graph, it's just an 8. Okay, so our equation then is negative 1/2 plus 8. Okay, last question on the test review. This one should be a no-brainer. Okay, I gave you the equation, find the slope and y-intercept. Well, we know the y-intercept is the number that stands alone, so that is the 2. The slope is the number that's with the x, so that is 3/4. Now I asked you to graph this. Okay, now this should be pretty simple. Y-intercept tells us where it's going to cross the y-axis, so it's going to cross at 2. Okay, now this slope, what it means is rise over run. So from that point, it's going to rise 3, 1, 2, 3, and it's going to run 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and you put a point. Then it does it again, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then to finish out your graph, you play connect the dots. And you have to have a minimum of 3 points on that graph. So that's our test review. That's what our test is going to look like tomorrow. So please make sure you study. It's not really that difficult. You should do well.